Getting 100 people to permanently live on Mars would cost more than $1 trillion. That's more than the GDP of 90% of countries on Earth. More than the entire US defense budget. And the strangest part? The people building toward it think it might be one of the best investments in human history. Today, we're going to find out if they're right, and what the actual cost equation looks like, line by line. We'll take you through the full capital stack: research and development, infrastructure, labor, supply chain, and the hidden liabilities that almost nobody is budgeting for. What you'll find is that the economics of Mars colonization are unlike any industry that has ever existed. Because this isn't a market yet. It's a pre-market. And pre-markets are where the most extraordinary fortunes in history have been built, and where the most catastrophic financial miscalculations have also been made. So let's start with the number that defines the entire economics of space travel: the cost per kilogram to reach orbit. In 2010, launching 1 kilogram into low Earth orbit cost $54,000. Today, with SpaceX's Falcon 9, that number is under $3,000. That is a 95% cost reduction in 15 years. Faster than the cost decline of personal computers, faster than solar panels, faster than almost any technology in industrial history. But Mars is not in low Earth orbit. Getting there requires escape velocity from Earth's gravitational field, a 7 to 9 month transit, and a controlled landing on a planet with completely different atmospheric density than what rocket engineers have spent decades optimizing for. The projected cost per kilogram to Mars, even with SpaceX's Starship at full operational scale, is somewhere between $100 and $1,000 per kilogram, depending on what assumptions you make about reusability. And reusability is the entire business model. If a rocket flies once and gets discarded, the economics never work. If it flies 100 times, they might. The financial case for Mars colonization rests entirely on achieving aircraft-like turnaround times for rockets that currently require months to refurbish between launches. It's as if the airline industry were trying to build a profit model, but every jet needed 6 months of maintenance after every transatlantic flight. Before a single person boards a spacecraft, the capital expenditure is staggering and produces no revenue. This is infrastructure spending in the purest sense, with payback timelines measured in decades, not quarters. Mission architecture alone, the engineering work of deciding how to get there, what to bring, how many people, what kind of habitat, takes years and costs billions. NASA's Artemis program, which is returning humans just to the moon, has consumed over $90 billion so far. Mars is roughly an order of magnitude more complex. Then there's crew preparation. Training 100 people for a Mars mission isn't a 6-month astronaut program. It's a decade-long investment in specialists who need to be simultaneously competent in medicine, engineering, agriculture, construction, and emergency operations. The salary cost alone for 100 people over 10 years runs into the hundreds of millions. Add simulation facilities, mission control infrastructure, and medical research, and you're looking at several $billion before anyone leaves the ground. The hardware pipeline is where the largest capital commitments accumulate. Launch vehicles, transit habitats rated for 9 months in deep space, surface habitats designed to last decades, nuclear power systems, life support with near-zero failure tolerance, food production infrastructure, medical facilities, and mining equipment. Each of these is a separate multi-billion-dollar development program. And critically, before the humans leave, you have to send the cargo ahead. Multiple unmanned supply missions, each time to the 26-month planetary alignment window that gives you an efficient trajectory. Miss the window, and you wait 2 years. Each cargo mission runs $500 million to $2 billion, and you need 3 to 5 of them, staged years in advance. The total pre-departure capital requirement for a credible 100-person Mars mission is somewhere between $80 and $200 billion. That's not a number any single company can absorb. That's why the economic structure of Mars colonization will look more like a public-private consortium than a traditional startup, closer to the interstate highway system than to a Silicon Valley venture. Now here is where the cost equation gets genuinely strange. The journey itself is a cost center with no revenue attached. For 7 to 9 months, 100 people are consuming food, water, oxygen, and power, all launched from Earth at enormous expense, while producing nothing of economic value. But the hidden costs of transit are where the real financial exposure lives. Radiation exposure in deep space is continuous and cumulative. Without Earth's magnetic field, crew members absorb galactic cosmic rays at a rate that measurably increases their lifetime cancer risk. And there's no insurance market for this. No actuary has ever written a policy for deep space radiation exposure, because no one has ever needed to. If you tried to price it, here's what you'd be pricing: a documented increase in lifetime cancer risk for every crew member, a legal liability with no precedent, and a development cost for meaningful shielding estimated at $10 to $30 billion that almost no mission budget currently includes. It's not a medical problem. It's an unpriced line item sitting in the middle of every Mars proposal. Zero-gravity physiology compounds the exposure. Expect bone density loss of 1 to 2% per month, cardiovascular deconditioning, and vision damage from intracranial pressure changes. The engineering solution is artificial gravity, achieved through rotation, but no rotating habitat has ever been built and flown at human scale. The development cost for just one such habitat is $5 to $20 billion. But it doesn't exist yet. There's also a productivity cost that rarely appears in cost models: psychological attrition. 8 months in a confined space, up to 20-minute one-way communication delays with Earth, no possibility of rescue, and total mission irreversibility create conditions that reliably degrade cognitive performance. Psychological breakdown in a life support environment doesn't announce itself with a single catastrophic event. It accumulates through micro-failures in judgment. And in an environment with zero tolerance for error, micro-failures kill. Assuming all goes well, when the crew lands on Mars, they step into the most operationally sophisticated and financially exposed startup environment ever conceived. The initial capital has been spent. The resupply pipeline is 140 million miles away, and the list of existential risks to the enterprise only grows. The Martian environment is an economic liability by any measure. Average surface temperature, negative 60 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure, less than 1% of Earth's, instantly lethal without a suit. No breathable oxygen. Intense ultraviolet radiation. Dust storms that can envelop the entire planet for months, reducing solar power output to near zero and depositing chemically toxic particles on every exposed surface. The first years are pure burn rate. Power comes from nuclear fission reactors launched from Earth, the only viable option at colony scale. NASA's current proof-of-concept reactor produces 10 kilowatts. A colony of 100 people needs 1 to 5 megawatts. The fission systems required to bridge that gap don't exist yet for Mars surface use. Developing them is estimated at $15 to $40 billion. Food production begins immediately in pressurized greenhouses, roughly 400 to 700 square meters of growing area for 100 people, maintained indefinitely in an environment that is actively trying to destroy every component inside it. Crop failure on Mars is not a supply chain problem. It's an existential event. Water comes from ice deposits extracted from the Martian subsurface. Oxygen gets separated from the carbon dioxide atmosphere. A NASA experiment on the Perseverance rover confirmed this works, but at the scale needed for 100 people, the equipment doesn't yet exist. Now consider the liabilities that nobody is pricing in. Imagine you're 3 years into the colony. Someone commits a crime. Not a misdemeanor, a serious one. Who arrests them? There's no law enforcement jurisdiction, no court. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 explicitly prohibits any nation from claiming sovereignty over Mars, which means the colony operates in a legal vacuum. Who arbitrates disputes? Who enforces contracts? Who owns the water ice the colonists extract? These aren't philosophical questions. They're operational risks that compound with every new colonist, every new economic transaction, every new year of growing complexity. And nobody is currently putting a number on them. Medical liability is equally unresolved. If a colonist needs emergency surgery, there is no evacuation. The nearest surgeon with full hospital backup is a 9-month flight away. The colony needs robotic surgical systems capable of performing complex procedures semi-autonomously, pharmaceutical fabrication, and diagnostic equipment that functions for decades without resupply. None of this exists at the required level of maturity. Development cost: $5 to $15 billion. With exactly one customer, in a location no competitor can reach. And then there's the liability that may be the most economically significant of all. The long-term effects of 38% Earth gravity on human physiology are entirely unknown. Bone structure, cardiovascular function, reproductive biology, child development, none of it has ever been studied in reduced gravity at this duration. A colony could discover, 10 years in, that the environment is producing irreversible physiological damage across the entire population. This is a documented data gap. It cannot be resolved without people actually living on Mars, which means the first colonists are also the first clinical trial. So let's add up the technology gaps alone, not mission costs, just the engineering problems that haven't been solved yet. Closed-loop life support at colony scale, $3 to $10 billion. Artificial gravity habitat, $5 to $20 billion. Advanced fission power systems, $15 to $40 billion. Robotic surgical and medical systems, $5 to $15 billion. Autonomous construction robotics, $3 to $10 billion. Deep space broadband communications, $2 to $8 billion. Radiation shielding, $10 to $30 billion. Added up, and the technology development bill alone, independent of any mission costs, is roughly between $50 and $130 billion. And that's almost certainly an undercount, because every single one of those estimates comes from people who are optimistic about their own field. Which brings us to the total cost estimate for a credible permanent Mars colony of 100 people over 30 years, upward of $1 trillion, depending on reuse economics, public-private cost sharing, and how quickly the pre-market technology gaps close. And history suggests you should not be surprised if the final number is substantially higher. The economics of Mars colonization bear a direct resemblance to earlier infrastructure investments that looked irrational at the time and generated returns that dwarfed the original cost. The internet required decades of government-funded infrastructure before it produced $1 of commercial revenue. The interstate highway system cost $500 billion in today's dollars and generated returns that exceed that figure many times over. The Apollo program cost $280 billion in today's dollars, and it produced the integrated circuit industry, satellite communications, and water purification technologies whose commercial value is incalculable. The return mechanisms for Mars are real, but the timescales are long. A self-sustaining Mars population creates a captive market for everything: energy, food, manufacturing, communications, medicine, which eventually generates GDP. Rare earth minerals and helium-3 exist on Mars and in the nearby asteroid belt. The technological spillover from solving the problems of Mars colonization in energy storage, medical robotics, autonomous systems, closed-loop agriculture will produce commercial applications on Earth worth multiples of the investment. But here is the economic logic that tends to get lost in the optimism. The people who build infrastructure rarely capture the returns. The transcontinental railroad enriched the landowners along its route, the industries that used it, and the cities that grew because of it. Not primarily the companies that built it. The internet enriched Amazon, Google, and Meta. Not the government research programs that created the underlying protocols. The question for Mars colonization isn't whether it will eventually pay off. It almost certainly will. The question is whether the country funding it will be the one that benefits, and whether you'll be alive when it does. Every major leap in human economic output started with someone funding something that seemed irrational by the standards of its time. The first transatlantic cables, the transcontinental railroad, the Apollo program. In each case, the capital allocation looked absurd until the return structure became visible. And the return structure only became visible after the infrastructure was built. Mars colonization is at that inflection point right now. The technologies that remain unsolved are real. So is the engineering momentum behind solving them. What this industry looks like in 30 years is genuinely unknown. But the economic logic isn't science fiction. It's infrastructure economics, applied at a scale humanity has never attempted before.